to a new episode of Breakfast Show. We're going to start today with the press review, as we are doing in the studio by Mr. Muhammad Shata, media expert. Hello, sir, and welcome to our show.
Thank you very much, and a very good morning to you and to all your lovely viewers of Nile TV.
Thank you. Let's start first with المصري اليوم. As we read, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi inaugurated the National Conference for Youth on Tuesday from the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh with the participation of 3,000 youth from the countries, universities and political parties. Prime Minister Sharif Ismail and a number of ministers, officials and public figures attended the opening ceremony of the three-day conference organized under the auspices of the President. Sir, what's your opinion about this conference and how do you see its importance?
Well, it's definitely very important, especially at this timing, because it kind of gives a hope to the young people. Because many of them over the past couple of months maybe were a little bit disappointed at the achievements of the government. So having a conference, organizing a conference and targeting the youth is definitely going to push their hopes and their enthusiasm a little bit more. What actually caught my attention during this conference were actually three things. There were two of the gentlemen who were participating in two of the panels, the conference panels which were taking place, and actually one of them, he was asking the president to have an additional program for the youth, because apparently the program which is taking place right now is only for youth till 30 who are maximum 30 years old, and he asked for an additional program for the young people who are between 30 and 40 years. And actually this is, I think, a very important issue, because all the young people who finish the universities are around 25 years old maybe, or something like this, so they maybe not have enough experience and surely also not experience maybe outside Egypt. And I think it's very important to also engage the people between 30 and 40 years between this age bracket, because actually most of them have lots of work experience. They have maybe also a wealth of experience which they have gained outside Egypt, which is extremely important. And we need out of the box thinking young people, because it's not only about having young people, but we need competent young people and experienced young people. So this is one thing. The other thing is there was also a pharmacist. I think he was the chairman of the pharmacists club or something like that, and he was complaining that there were too many pharmacists graduating each year from the different private and public universities, and that many of them are now jobless because there's an oversupply of pharmacists in the market. And he asked President Sisi to reduce the number of faculties of pharmacies. The problem is, actually, this is something which the market has to kind of balance, and the private sector and also the public sector should instruct the people what kind of education we need more. For example, the German economy is based on the dual educational system. Most of the mid-size and the large companies depend highly on the technicians, not necessarily only the engineers. If you look, for example, the ratio between the numbers of engineers and technicians in a company, for example, you'll find them maybe 25 to 75 in favor for the technicians. So this is something which we need very much. And actually, President Sisi said that most of the Egyptian, this is like something, a traditional thing with Egyptian families, that they want their kids to become a doctor or an engineer. So I think it's really about time that the private sector also gives some indicators what kind of education they need, and I think we should definitely focus more on the dual education system in the short term.
Okay, and now we have a report about this topic, and we'll come back, so please stay tuned.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi inaugurated on Tuesday the first annual National Youth Conference in the Sinai resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh with the participation of 3,000 youth from the country's universities and political parties. Prime Minister Sharif Ismail and a number of ministers, officials, and public figures attended the opening ceremony of the three-day conference organized under the auspices of the President. During his inauguration speech, Sisi said that the conference, the first session of which was focused on education in Egypt, should be used to have a dialogue and raise hope. Regarding the education system in Egypt, the Sisi said that the government cannot put an overhaul of the country's poor education system high on its agenda at the moment, as the country doesn't have sufficient resources to do so. The second session was focused on the evaluation of youth participation in parliament. During the session, President Sisi suggested that each MP be appointed 2 assistants under the age of 40 so as to prepare the youth for politics. He also encouraged the youth to participate in the upcoming local council elections.
Welcome back, and moving to Shuru newspaper, where President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has announced on Tuesday the formation of a committee to revise the cases of youth activists detained for non-violent charges in political related cases. Sisi made the announcement during the second session of the National Youth Conference in Sharm el-Sheikh. Sir, what's your comment on this formation of committee, as I believe it was the public figure Al-Ghazali Harb asked the president to release the youth who are in prison. So what do you think of this committee?
Well, I think this is definitely a good approach, actually. I mean, President Sisi also talked about it in another session when he was asked by one of the female activists or representatives of the Masrin Ahrar, the Free Egyptian Party, about the same topic. And I think it's definitely going to bring the two parties a little bit closer, because like I said, there's still, also this lady mentioned this in her contribution during this session, that there's still kind of a gap between the government and the youth on one hand, and the youth or the political activists, the young political activists on the other hand. So I think it's definitely a good step, and hopefully this will calm the situation in Egypt a little bit, because there have been some tensions over the past couple of weeks, and lots of people, like I said earlier, they don't really see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I think such a step will give them a kind of a hope for the next couple of months, because of course you cannot transform a economy from a devastated economy to a flourishing economy within 2 years. This is nonsense. This is not possible. So I think this is also an awareness problem that most of the people have, that it takes time to build an economy, because actually the economy has suffered a lot during the past 5 years. And when President Sisi took over, I mean, the economy was at its best. So I think such an approach will calm down the young people a little bit more and give them some kind of a hope for the short term.
Okay, and moving to Al-Masri Al-Yawm newspaper, where we read Egypt Foreign Ministry on Tuesday condemned in strongest terms the militants' attack that in the hotel on northern Kenya on Tuesday morning, killing a dozen of people and stoking outrage from Kenyans who accused their government of not doing enough to protect them from a relentless menace. A spokesman for the Foreign Ministry, Ahmed Abu Zaid, offered condolences to the families of the victims and wished the injured a speedy recovery. Again, we witnessed terrorism and non-stop terrorism in, of course, the Black Continent, Africa. So, what's your comment on that?
Well, what is really disappointing is that Kenya is actually one of the richest countries in Africa, and of course this shows that the interests of the terrorist groups does not really stop in front of any certain borders. And I hope that very soon also the African countries sit together on one table and try to solve the problems, because I think as soon as the faster we solve the economical problems of the African nations and the African continent, I think this will have a positive impact on the economy of each country, and this will automatically reduce the acceptance, or not the acceptance, actually the possibility of terrorist attacks, because there will not be any supporters for such terrorist groups.
Okay, and moving to أخبار اليوم newspaper, where we read joint military drills between Egypt's armed forces and their Russian counterparts concluded on Tuesday, 10 days after it began on the 15th of October. The joint drill, including Egyptian and Russian paratroopers units in the northwestern region of El Alamein. The purpose of the joint exercises is fighting terrorism. The Russians sent 800 combat soldiers, including paratroopers, 15 helicopters, and over 100 tons of equipment. Mr. Mohammed, what's the importance of these joint exercises? What's going to add to Egypt's military making exercises with another foreign country?
Well, actually, lots of countries do this, having joint military trainings. First of all, it's an exchange of experience and an exchange of competence, and of course, it shows the strong ties between those countries. Nevertheless, I think it's also part of the new relationship which Egypt and especially President Sisi opened during the last 2 years with different countries. We're not only focusing on having good relations with the United States, but we're also now focusing on having good relations with other countries like Russia, for example, like Greece, like Cyprus. I recall 2 or 3 days ago, I was reading a status of a dear friend of mine. His name is Dr. Hani Barakat. He used to be the CEO of the Egyptian Organization for Standardization here in Egypt, and he moved to the private sector. And he had an important meeting, I think it was in Athens or in Cyprus, with with his counterparts there to open new relations between his company and the foreign companies there. And they were speaking very well about Egypt, and they were very happy with the development which Egypt has been doing over the past couple of months, and about the strong relations with Athens and Nicosia, of course. So I think this is definitely a positive side effect, which will show that Egypt has good relations to many other countries, to which we can rely on in case we need them at any given point.
Okay, I'm moving to الأخبار news, أخبار اليوم, a newspaper where we read the Arab Ministers of Water Resources at the irrigation will hold Wednesday their 8th session meeting at the Arab League headquarters in Cairo. The ministers are expected to discuss the number of important issues related to water in the Arab world, especially the difficulties facing Palestine in preserving its water. What's the importance of such a conference, and why they are tackling it now?
Well, of course, the water issue is a very serious issue, especially for Palestine, but not only for Palestine, but also actually for Egypt. I think we need to stop wasting the water resources, the very limited water resources we have, in the way we are currently wasting them, actually. I mean, if you go through any street in Mohandesin or Doki or Maadi or 6th of October or Tagama or wherever, you'll find all the guards of the different houses cleaning and washing each car every morning with water. You know, I mean, this is a huge waste of water resources, and I think we need to really raise the awareness of people about that. I was just listening to Radio Masr yesterday, and there was this gentleman called Chef Sherbini, this famous cook here in Egypt. And he was actually telling people that he has a dishwasher in his kitchen, but he's not using it. Actually, and he was encouraging people not to use it and that they should wash the dishes by themselves. Actually, this is a huge waste of water if you wash the dishes by yourself, because if you calculate the amount of water a dishwasher uses let's say, for washing 40 plates or something, it's much less than if you would wash them yourself. So I think we need to raise the awareness of people how to really save water during our daily things.
Okay, and moving to Egypt Independent, where we read Minister of Supply and International Trade, Mohammed al-Masalhi, said in a press statement on Tuesday that the ministry is currently working to build up a 6-month strategic reserve of basic commodities. He said that the ministry is working with the National Service Projects Authority of the Armed Forces to boost reserves, adding that the CBE has allocated $1.8 billion to fund the project. According to Masalhi, there are currently enough sugar reserves to the last 4 months. The ministry has ordered 450,000 tons of sugar, 134,000 tons of which will be available this week. Why we have a sudden problem with sugar, and also we found that another official said yesterday, but I don't remember who was it, the Prime Minister or the Minister of Supply, who said that we're going to find later on another crisis in other
rice.
I don't know, but he said later on there will be another crisis.
Actually, I heard similar things during the last week. There was some experts were saying that the next crisis will be about the rice and
the oil as well.
Probably. The problem is this is a very good example of mismanagement of the Ministry of Agriculture, actually, because I mean we have thousands of acres which we could use for example, for sugar canes or whatever. I mean, we should not be in this situation. I mean we have so many we have so many opportunities to grow our own needs for any agriculture product. Actually, we rice, sugar, whatever. I think we really have a problem, and apparently there are some lobbies and some maybe businessmen from the private sector who have a huge interest in importing those products in order to have a huge profit, to make a huge profit out of that. So hopefully the government will really focus a little bit on how to develop the agriculture sector in Egypt, because I think it's really a disaster, and it's something really embarrassing that Egypt as a nation needs to import beans, for example. I heard we're importing 75% of the beans supply we have annually in Egypt. This is a joke. So this is definitely an example of mismanagement of the Ministry of
There's another
Agriculture.
thing, Mr. Mohammed. Recently, we had a crisis in sugar, and we found that Egypt was exporting sugar to Libya. So how we have a crisis and how we are exporting sugar?
Well, actually, because exporting and the importing and the exporting is taking place mainly by people from the private sector. So you can't really force them, you know. I mean, and if they think that they can make more money by exporting those goods, then they would just buy them from the local markets. And they don't care.
I think the sugar was exported through legal channels in the government, through the government.
This brings us back to the point. It's a complete mismanagement of the Ministry of Agriculture, and I think we really need to figure out how we can restructure this ministry and give them some targets, some real targets. For example, in 5 years we need to produce, I don't know how many millions of tons of this product and of this product, and they should really try to obey to those targets. I mean, this is something very easy, and I think we have lots of potential in Egypt. We have lots of farmers, of very competent farmers here in Egypt. We have lots of good companies who are exporting actually their fruits and vegetables also to Europe. So we know how to run this business. But like I said, there is a huge probably there is some corruption somewhere in this whole thing, between the public sector and the private sector as well. But nevertheless, the mismanagement is definitely the main reason for such crisis.
Okay, and moving to Al Wafd newspaper, where we read Egypt's revenues from the Suez Canal rose in August by 4.3% to register for $147.6 million compared to the previous month. According to the state's information website, of course, the vital Egyptian waterway generated $429 million in July. The Suez Canal Authority is considering a new initiative that would require the world's top container shippers to pay tolls in advance. Negotiations are currently underway between the authority and three of the world's biggest shipping groups: the Danish-based Maersk, the French CMA-CGM Group, and the Swiss-based Mediterranean Shipping Co. MSC on the details of the deal. Also, I read about that they need money in advance from the shipping that is crossing the Suez Canal. They need 3 years in advance or to 5 years in advance. So why they are asking for this now, and why? It's not this is something new. Maybe happens the first time in the Suez Canal. So why is that?
Yes, this is definitely something very unusual in the business sector. Well, I mean, it's always good to have your money in advance. The more in advance you get it, the better. But I'm not sure if those big shipping groups will really agree to that. I mean, a raise of 4.3% is okay. I mean, it's nothing bad. But this should not be our focus. We should not rely on the Suez Canal and the tourism sector for getting foreign currencies. We should improve the industrial sector, the agricultural sector. We need to become a nation of export. And this is the only way that the economy will grow. Because actually tourism is not sustainable. If any terrorist attacks happens anywhere in Egypt, then this will again put us back in a crisis. Like we witnessed over the past couple of years. What was very confusing during the past couple of days, the problem which two local companies had in Egypt, one producing beverages and the other one producing sweet products and chocolate and stuff like that, where the government, where some governmental authorities went and seized 2,000 tons of sugar they had. Yeah. I'm not sure if
these two big companies were also exporting their goods outside. So
I think the beverage company is not exporting, but definitely the other one. But definitely the other one is exporting. And this is a very confusing indicator actually for both the local investors as well as the foreign investors. And the funny thing is, this American beverage company, at the same time where this happened, there was a delegation from the United States headed by one of the advisors of Foreign Minister John Kerry, with over 50 representatives of the 50 American businessmen. And I think we need to give those investors a clear strategy and indicators that there is some light at the end of the tunnel. And actually the government has been quite disappointing in that over the past couple of months, and they have not been very supportive for the local investors as well as the foreign investors. Which brings us back to the point that at sometimes they are very strict with some companies like those two companies we mentioned earlier, but on the other hand they leave other sectors doing what they want, exploiting the Egyptian consumer as they want. For example, the automotive sector again, where prices of the cars have doubled and in some cases even tripled, which is something completely insane. And I really don't know why it's taking the government so long to solve this problem. It is very easy. I mean, there is kind of a monopoly, and there are apparently hidden and secret agreements between the different importers to raise and the importers and their dealers to raise the car prices by certain amounts and not going down by any means. And the problem is that we can solve it very easily. Mr. President, open the import for used cars. It's very easy. Allow Egyptian people, Egyptian citizens, and the consumers.
They're gonna add customs on the used cars, so the prices also will go
insane. But actually, the customs will be paid in Egyptian pound, you know. But the most important thing is open the import for me and you and all the other citizens to import the cars by themselves. without any additional taxes or without giving benefits for the importers, for example, because the importers, they get a 10% discount.
But Mr. Mohammed, I want to ask you something. The prices of the cars have been raised, as you said,
Without any reason.
without any reason, and
Any reasonable reason.
but people are now cannot buy and cannot afford to buy even a normal car like before, a Korean car, a Chinese car like before. So why they are raising the cars like this, and at the end they will not find anyone to buy them?
Well, actually, they still do, because actually the Egyptian market is very small, and the supply is always less than the demand. We have 100 million people living in Egypt. If only 1% would go buy a car, this would mean 1 million people. Actually, 1 million people have the capability of buying a car. But the dealers are only offering 100,000 cars a year. So there is a gap of at least 500 to 900,000 units where there will always be a demand. So no matter how much you raise the prices, people will come and are forced to buy it from you, especially if the importer is making a deal, an illegal deal, with his dealers and his authorized dealers. For example, to put an overprice of 50,000 on the cars costing, for example, 100,000 Egyptian pounds. So everyone sticks to this overprice. In other examples, the car prices rose from, I'll just give you, a German luxury car was sold 1 year ago or a couple of months ago for 1.9 million Egyptian pounds. Now the official price is 2.6 million pounds. And if you want to buy this car, you're only going to get it for 3.2 or 3.3 million pounds as with the overprice. So this is something completely getting out of hands, and I really don't understand why the government is not doing anything. It is very easy. Just open the import for the people to import cars, not only for people but also for the free trade, for the so-called gray market or the gray importers, the free importers, the independent importers, and this will, first of all, this will save us at least 50% of the needs of our hard currencies, for which we need for the cars. We are currently importing cars for, I think, 3.5 billion US dollars. This will reduce the need by at least 1 billion, if not even more. Secondly, it will reduce the fleet consumption, because all the cars which we would import, let's say from Europe, they are Euro 5 or Euro 6 standards, which means they have less fuel consumption than the old technology cars sold here in Egypt or imported here in Egypt. They have all the latest safety, active and passive safety features. This means we would have less accidents. Secondly, this means also that those cars would have the modern engines. This would mean we will have less pollution, and we will also not need so much subsidies for the fuel in Egypt, because the fuel consumption will be reduced, because those cars use at least half, 50% less than the cars currently sold in Egypt by the importers. So I really don't understand what is the reason for not importing this thing. Is there a lobby in Egypt, for example, representing the local company, the local companies, the local assembly companies here in Egypt? Is there a mafia, for example, in the second row or in the middle management of the different ministries? If this is the case, and we're talking here about billions, I mean, if you of course, the three or the two main factories here in Egypt, owned by two famous Egyptian men, Ghabour and Dr. Auf Ghabour and the Mansour family, of course, they have a keen interest of not allowing the import of cars, because then they would run out of business. And I think the government really, and President al-Sisi himself, he really needs to solve this problem. And like I said, it can be solved within just a couple of weeks.
Well, Mr. Mohammed Shata, media expert, thank you very much for joining us, and welcome once again to Breakfast
Thank
Show.
you very much for having me. Have a lovely day, you and your lovely
Thank
viewers.
you, and you
Thank
too. And now we are going to move to the weather forecast, so please stay tuned.